Hi everyone, I am jumping in here because I have had so many amazing, beautiful inquiries and questions about my post that I wrote about my journey of being more in my feminine in my relationship. So I shared a post about how my relationship has shifted when my focus has been more on being in my feminine radiance and how it's allowed my husband to step into his inner king that was always there, that I was kind of stamping out. And obviously that was not my intention. It was never my intention, but it's the deep conditioning that we have. And so I shared that post about how our relationship is, and then I've had some beautiful questions from people that are in my community. So I thought and a couple of them I have sent voice clips to and had back and forth conversation. So instead I thought I'd come in here and do it in here, because it is very much about in line with the mission of this group. And so this group is all about celebrating who you are and the reclamation of your most authentic self, of your inner priestess. And when we do that, we obviously have a different experience in relationships. And so what I wanted to do is come in here and answer some of the questions. So if you are catching the replay, #replay, let me know that you've watched it. If you have specific questions, just write them below the video. I can't see them here because I'm doing it on my phone. I can't see it here, but I'll answer them after the video. So I feel like I'm not an expert. Caveat, I'm not an expert in this. There are many books, there are people that teach this stuff. I am not an expert. I am sharing my experience of polarity in relationship. And so in a male and female relationship, that is. So I'll start with, so in the post I shared how we've been together. So this is long-term relationship. We've been together, so I was 26 and he was 40 when we met. And I had been surrounded by, in my life, I was raised by an amazing solo mum who had had a really rough time with, my dad cheated and then she just felt really unsupported by the masculine. And she had, he then remarried and wasn't very supportive, and he's a narcissist. So, we know how that goes to co-parent with someone like that. So she was hyper independent. And so she told me growing up, you cannot rely on men. But I always had this desire, and it was known to my mum would say that's a fantasy and that's really ridiculous. But I wanted an old-fashioned relationship. Now, my grandfather, he passed away last year, but he was my father figure. He was the role model to me of the masculine. And I didn't really recognize that until quite recently, because I had such a healthy view of the masculine, despite what my mum was telling me and despite how my dad was showing up. Because my dad was very critical of me, very, very, because I didn't worship him, all this weird manipulative stuff, and it was just all messed up. But I had this vision and this view of how I wanted it to be. Turns out, upon reflection, it was my grandfather, so my maternal grandfather, that provided the masculine role model for me. Now, when I talk about healthy masculine versus unhealthy masculine, what I'm referring to is, I'm going to put a post in this group to share it with you, because I think it's an important aspect of this. Because I don't often talk about this, but because I don't teach it or anything like that, but in groups where I bring it up and talk about how it can look in relationship, and how I'm actually so turned on and just so driven by the desire to be led and have the decisions made for me, and to have him lead me, and to protect, and for the provision, and for him, like all of those things. And I have some women say to me, and I think my mum, who's also passed away, would be going, Sky, because it was so against how I grew up. She just said, you never want to be told what to do. They don't know better than you, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm referring to the healthy masculine. So being led, or being in a relationship with a man who is not in his healthy masculine, it isn't a good dynamic, and you won't feel safe, and you will feel triggered by this experience, what I'm implying. But when the masculine is in the healthy side, and so I'm going to share some of the things that they are strong and protective, and they worship the masculine. So it's straight up, if the man is misogynistic, if the man is degrading or defamatory or discriminatory in any way of the feminine, and now this can be subversive, or more outwardly demonstrated, but it'll be if they have a mother wound. And so if they don't worship the feminine. So healthy masculine is strong, protective, worships the feminine, supportive, present. They're present, they're active. I'm looking at a list that I've written. They're proactive, abundant, powerful. They're a provider. They want to provide for you. And this doesn't mean that you don't work and you don't contribute financially. This means that they have a desire to provide and to contribute in a big way, in terms of not just financially, in energy and presence as well, and resources. So the support that they provide you gives you the resources to do the things that you want to do, which contribute to the family and to your life. Confident, physical, energized. They're energized, and if they're not in their healthy masculine. Passionate, heroic, courageous, able to surrender to and be held by the feminine. They love unconditionally. They're in touch with their feelings, but not controlled by them. They're empowered, and they're not threatened. They know, they're very stoic and know who they are. And, the opposite to that is the unhealthy. So they are destructive, they're unbalanced, they're ruthless, they're inconsiderate, forceful, brutal, selfish, egoic, sees himself as separate, arrogant, disconnected from emotions, easily threatened, cowardly, deceitful, stubborn, endures and strives when it's time to stop. So they're not able to listen, headstrong. And so the healthy masculine dynamic absolutely just wants to serve the feminine. They aren't destructive, they aren't manipulative, they aren't critical. They're deeply reverent of the feminine, because they know the magic and the power and the gifts that we offer. And we know that a healthy man knows that he gets to do all that he gets to do when he's supported beautifully by a radiant feminine, someone who's in her radiant self, in her radiance. And so that's the premise of all of this, right? And so I started to recognize about 5 years ago that all of the challenges in our marriage were because, it seemed like he was always the problem from my perspective. And the more I went into like the fixing or the mother role, the worse it got. So polarity gets destroyed when you go into the mother role, when you go into the fixing or judgment, and over nurturing. And so we can't be someone's mother and lover. It messes things up. And so you'll find that your attraction to the masculine diminishes and the libido goes away, goes right down if they're not in their healthy masculine. And so their unhealthy masculine can show up as those destructive things, but also it can be overly feminized, where they're wanting you, they're acting like a little boy, and they're going into the feminine role where they want you to be like their best friend, and it's not meant to be like that. As in this framework that I'm talking about, you can do it however you want to do it, and there is absolutely no judgment from me. And when I first got my head around this concept, I was really resistant, but anything that I'm really triggered by and really resistant to is really, I have a kink for anything that's hard, that's difficult and hard for me. And so if I know that I'm triggered by it, then I'm like, well, there's something here for me. So then I started to really lean into it. And so I recognized that what I was doing, where everything else in my life, I'm self-responsible, and I know that I'm a creator of my reality. And I called myself out through looking at this through this lens about 5 years ago, when I realized that here I was thinking he was, if he just changed this, and if he did this differently, then our life would be different, our relationship would be different. And instead I shifted to what I could do and what was there for me. And what I started to uncover was how all of my communication to him was with the intention to get an outcome. Everything I did was to get an outcome. So it was manipulative, and it was filled with judgment, and it was very masculinized, unhealthy masculinized communication. And so it was penetrative, and it was kind of bossy, but I was saying, I'm strong. Now here's the thing, I am really strong. I am really connected and have access to that part of me. And I know that that's kind of a wounded part of me. That's wounding that has me show up in that way. Because if I was fully safe in who I am, if I was fully safe in my body, and I was fully able to lean into the safety of my relationship, then I wouldn't have to show up in that way. I would fully trust that he was taking care of things, and that creator, the universe, life was being taken care of, and that I could be attuned to to the rhythms of life and to the guidance coming through my channel, and I could just move through life. And when shit hits the fan, then I don't have the control that kicks in, that rather I know that this is all for me, and this is all part of my growth and expansion, and I know that I'm held and protected over here, and that I'm held and protected by the universe. But I've been conditioned otherwise. And so each time I come up to my resistance points of allowing him to really lead me and lead our family and make decisions and choices, we mutually decide, hi Kelly, that we mutually decide that that he's going to take care of, then I let that happen. Now what happens is that I will have things where I am happy to let him lead, and then there'll be times where he's leading and then I think, actually, I don't like that decision. I don't think you did a good job there. I don't know about this. I think I need to get back into having a bit more control. And this is just another layer of allowing and surrender and releasing control for me. And so if you're jumping in now, I'm about, 10 minutes in. So make sure you go back and watch the beginning, because I've sort of set it up for what I'm going to be sharing. Like the punchline, which is coming up. So the things that I did were, I started to really delve into what it is to really embrace the feminine. So I started just reading books about, so I read the book, The Way of the Superior Man. So I read that book, and it obviously is for men, but it was to help me understand. And while I had this beautiful role model of my grandfather and the relationship that how he provided and cared and led my grandmother, I still had, and I have a beautiful husband, I still had like some residual stuff, some residual father wounds, some residual like the stories about men that would show up occasionally, and which inhibited the experience of allowing my husband to lead. And so what I did was I just started exploring, because that's for me, under the mental framework, the mental understanding was supportive for me. So understanding what the masculine, healthy masculine looked like, what the feminine looked like. So I'm going to share it in this group as well, the list that I've got. And so for me, it's not that the feminine, I learned, the feminine is not always in the floaty dress and just, being gracious and smiling. It's not that. It's the full, this is the part that I didn't get. It's the feminine there's the dark feminine. If we look at all the goddesses and we look at Goddess Kali, and she's got these gnashing teeth and these weapons, and that's the thing. It's the embracing the full spectrum of who you are, including the feelings. So one of the things that shifted massively for me was that I'm a very emotional person, but I would use that to manipulate him. Like, I wasn't overly conscious of it. I didn't really mean to do that, but I was trying to like repress it within me, and I would become snitchy and bitchy, which then would mess things up between us, cause him to act in certain ways, and it would just be a shit show. It was about me actually embracing the feminine, recognizing the wounded feminine within me from my experiences, from society, all the stories, the conditioning, and acknowledging actually that the gift of the feminine is this way in which the energy and the feelings move through. If we are not in our feelings and we're not actually being moved by our feelings daily, and I deeply believe this, then we are not connected to our bodies and we're not in our radiant feminine. Because it's meant to just literally move through us. And like we shed every month with our cycle, and we are designed to be alchemizing and moving things through very frequently. So as soon as I have the feeling come up in me, instead of suppressing it and trying to pretend that I'm fine and then become annoyed and irritated and disconnected from my body and then not understand what's going on and then inflict it on others, it's about expressing the feelings of what is there without without manipulation, without the desire for it to have an outcome, but just to be expressed and be heard. And what it did was it allowed him insight, my husband, insight into what it was. And then how they want to solve it. They want to solve it. And it used to frustrate me. I used to say, I don't want you to solve it. I just want you to listen to me, because I wanted him to be like a woman. And as this was all happening instinctively. And in fact, the masculine is just there to hold. So he now holds, and then he asks me, do I want help with solving it? And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just want to get it out. And then if I want help to solve it, then he'll offer. So then he's in his provision and leadership to be able to help solve the thing, or just hold the space and provide care and support through the experience. So then it starts to heal the wounding within me that says that I have to hold it together and I have to be something other than overly dramatic and emotional. Like, I felt like I was an inconvenience and a burden because I was so emotional all of the time. But what was happening was I was suppressing it and not letting it come through. And then it was coming out in dysfunctional ways and being prolonged and all that kind of stuff. So the first step was starting to express my feelings and share and let, because it creates emotional intimacy with your partner. If they feel emotional intimacy and you're letting them see you and you're not judging them or criticizing them or anything in any way, and there's no kind of like, it's not for an agenda, it's not to create an outcome, but rather to express the feeling, then they start to feel really connected in themselves and want to support you through that. So often my husband now will always say to me, I used to think I burdened him with my feelings, and he kind of would get annoyed sometimes by them. Now he says, thank you for sharing your feelings, and he'll validate them. And I can't tell you how healing that is. And then how you witness how fast things can move through you, because you're not judging yourself, you're not stuffing it down. They're not judging you, they're witnessing you deeply. And we know what happens when we're witnessed and we're loved through that experience. That is so healing for the feminine. Like, it is just so deeply healing. So your softening will support him to step more into his leadership, more and more and more. And so then when I forget that I'm doing, like if I forget and I get disconnected and I get triggered and something happens and I get off track, he will remind me and he'll say, yeah, what is going on here? Like, I do not want you to speak to me like that, and that kind of thing. Like, and he'll just come back with this loving force that really brings me back into my body and into myself. And occasionally I become bratty and resistant because there's something to move through, but he has the confidence now, because of the journey that we've been through, to really hold that experience. And so I can feel the emotion in my body of how transformative and how healing this has been for me. So it's a journey, but the first step is the softening into your feelings and the developing the emotional intimacy to share where you felt let down by them, like where it feels scary to trust and where it feels scary to do this because this happened and that happened. Like, I have done this, I have said, there's no attachment to this, I just want to share this piece. This is, over the 3 years ago when I really started diving into this, was that I said to him, I don't know if you can hold me. I don't know if you really have what it takes to lead me, because I've been doing all of these things. And so I'm going to focus on me and my radiance and my self-care and asking for what I want, asking for what I need, and being soft. And I'm asking you to hold me through that. And it's just the best decision I ever made, because all of the things that have come, like, I didn't change him one bit. I didn't tell him what book to read. I literally, and that's what I thought I had to do. I thought I had to tell him, think for him and direct him and all of that. If you do that, you are taking away his instincts. You are stopping him from doing these things. You are there's a word, you are, it's codependence, but it's another thing. Anyway, I can't think of the word. You don't want to do that. I just focused on me being in my radiance and expressing my feelings, creating intimacy, and when things were good, expressing to him, this feels scary to me. I don't know if you can hold me. You've judged me before for my feelings, so I don't know if this is safe for me to do it. And, you know, and express the big idea, the big vision of what it was that I was doing. And then together we went through the process of and it was all about me being less of a bitch, and me being less controlling, and me being happier and more connected. And so now I'm more connected and radiant and present with my family and present with my children. And when something's not right, you should see them all. They're like, you know, this is happening because you haven't been doing exercise, or you haven't spent enough time in nature. And like and I've got 2 sons, and it's like their instincts are that they know how it all works now, because we're attuned to each other. And so I invite you to, one of the questions was that I had was about, you know, how does it look day to day? So I'm going to do a separate video about that, because I've shared here the first steps that I took for me to soften more into my radiance, and then naturally, by nature, he stepped more into his king. That's how it works. That's how polarity works. Then in terms of big decisions and things, we still consult on everything. We still have a beautiful, like, it feels like an equal relationship in terms of, I feel like I have a say. I feel like everything that I desire is definitely on the table for discussion. And it's not that anything that I'm less than or whatever. It's that he is now doing things that's aligned with his instincts, and I'm doing the things that are aligned with my instincts. And in that experience, everyone benefits, including me. And so we still consult on everything, we still make decisions together, all of that sort of stuff. But it's the leadership piece is that I have had a lot of the cognitive load alleviated for me. Like, I just don't have to worry about anything to do with kind of the structures of our life at all. And so just a final note to close up. So I saw a reel the other day, and it was this reel of this guy, husband and wife, walking holding hands. It was him saying, in his head, it was the words in his head, and it was like him assessing where the exits were, who was in the room, all the things that men do. And then her was like singing, and it's like, when I'm with my husband, she's just singing in her head and living her best life and not having to worry about anything. And that's kind of what it gets to be like. Like, we went out for dinner for my birthday, and he worked out where we park, and just all the things. He just takes care of all of those things that I just get to enjoy it. Now I take care of all the meal planning and all of the shopping and all of the things that before we were trying to share the load on absolutely everything, and it just wasn't working. And so now I get to be doing the things that I feel more aligned and feel like I'm more my zone of genius, and he gets to do the same. So let me know if you have other questions, what comes up for you, what what you feel resistance with, just how you feel about what you've just listened to. And the other thing was, there's all this conversation about submission and things like that. Like, I don't really think of it like that. Like, I just don't think of it like that. I think I'm just letting him lead, and I'm receiving his leadership. That's how I view it. Anyway, I'll leave that with you. I'll share in the group the list of the healthy masculine and the list of the healthy feminine, because it's fun to look at. I'll speak with you soon.